A warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session. My name is Andrew Hansen, and I'm part of the Women's Forum editorial team, and we'd like to welcome you to today's town hall session on a mindful recovery. And so with that, I'll hand over to Leah Daughtry, who's the CEO of On These Things, who would be leading today's discussion. Leah, the floor is yours.
Good day, my sisters. Greetings to you from wherever you're joining us from. As we gather today, we are still, our world, wrestling with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. It has affected every area of our lives, our workplaces, our businesses, our homes, our family lives, and our personal health, of course. This morning, we want to talk about how we, even while we are navigating these challenges, look to the future and build back better, to use the words of President-elect Joe Biden. One of the areas that we're going to focus on this morning is, what does recovery look like from the standpoint of our mental health? We're focused a lot on our physical health, but how does building back better look when we talk about mental health? Our whole selves, how we think, how we feel, and how do we build mental health into the very fiber and fabric of the society that we will create. Joining me this morning are some women who are experts in their field and who have firsthand experience with these issues. Joining me are Marion Birnstill, Senior Manager, Global Community Impact for the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. Richa Gupta, co-founder of the Labhya Foundation and one of our Women's Forum Rising Talent 2020. Sanah, Jivani, United States Delegate for Girls 20, and founder and CEO of Love Your Natural Self Foundation. Thuba, Sibanda, Girls Opportunity Alliance. Megan Lawrence, of the Senior Accessibility Evangelist, co-lead of the Employees with Mental Health Conditions at Microsoft. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you, and looking forward to this conversation. And for all of the women who are gathering today, our sisters and our brothers who are gathering to join us today, we want to remind you to send in your questions, add them to the chat, so that when our discussion begins, we can address some of your concerns and your questions directly. So we're going to spark this conversation with just a fire starter, for example. And Marion, we're going to start with you. We know that your work recognizes community health and care as the cornerstone of a reliable health system and a reliable health workforce. So you focus a lot on preventative care. Talk to us about what you're doing, what you've learned. And I particularly make sure you share that story about the waterfalls, the doctors at the waterfalls.
Great, thanks, Leah. Thanks for having me for this important conversation. And I'm so honored to be part of such an inspiring panelist, amongst inspiring panelists. There's no doubt that the pandemic has significantly deteriorated the mental well-being of citizens at large. And right now, many of us are caught in between supporting the immediate needs, while at the same time really reimagining the future. In our case, we've made mental health central to our COVID-19 response, really focusing on supporting frontline health workers and their psychosocial needs. We set up and launched with our partners several programs across more than 20 countries, really acknowledging that frontline health workers are indeed at the cornerstone of strong health systems. But what we know today is that historically, health systems have been built to respond to diseases. They haven't been designed to reach out to people. And in this constellation, what we're asking is, how might we shift our focus from curing diseases to sustaining good health? Or how might we shift our focus from providing mental health care to sustaining mental well-being? How might we design health services that are more holistic, more human-centered, closer to home, and most importantly, more grounded in that resilience more than cure? Our partners, some of them here with us today, are innovating, implementing, and scaling community mental health services, really offering patients and citizens at home or in their communities tools and support services to navigate different aspects of their lives. Mental health, of course, but also various facets that entangle themselves within our resilience and mental well-being, such as employment, housing, financial literacy. So for us, we really believe that there is an opportunity to explore new community health model, new community mental health model, and seeing how these community health models can allow us to approach health differently. And while we are really far from having all the answers or the recipe for success, our belief is that community health is one of the key ingredients for a more resilient individual, community, and system. And I know that all of the panelists here today have their own key ingredient that we can throw into the recipe as we start having that complex and important conversation to set ourselves towards health systems transformation.
Thank you so much, Megan. Marion, you raised some really good points, and with that, it gave me a good transition to Richa, because as you talk about community health and how we build community health, Richa, your work focuses on educational programs and social and emotional, how you create this conversation at a systemic level through our education system. So talk to us more about access and the happiness curriculum that you developed.
Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you so much to the entire team at the Women's Forum for giving me this opportunity to share about my work, but more importantly, bring out this important conversation in the open, especially from a country like India, where mental health and talking about your emotions is still much of a taboo. I think to begin with, I would like to highlight that today, as we speak, there are 1.8 billion young people across the world, of which 90% live in developing countries. And most of these young people live with low resources and low resource settings, and are grappling with different dimensions of multidimensional poverty. And this systemic issue then sort of amplifies because public education systems, which is where most of these young people go to study, don't have the capacity to equip our young people with the skills and the support to really thrive in life. And that's where the problem sort of begins. And so connecting that to the kind of work that we do at Labhya Foundation, where we equip governments and nonprofits and multilateral organizations to create social and emotional learning educational programs at scale in public education systems. Doing this work is really, really important because although today we're talking about mental health and the COVID-19 pandemic has amplified the need for it, a lot of governments, especially in developing countries, do not have the capacity or the expertise to develop programs such as these to support our young people. And so it's really important for civil society like Labhya Foundation and other nonprofits. I know we also have Sanah here who's doing some wonderful work, to equip the government with the right skills, with the right area expertise to be able to implement these programs. I think this is also a big opportunity for us to leverage the power that governments have to implement these programs at scale. Something like the happiness curriculum, which my foundation developed with the government of Delhi in India, is a daily mandatory 30-minute class where children are equipped with different kinds of skills like resilience and relationship building to be able to become lifelong learners and cope. And I think this is what all children across the world, especially in developing countries, need.
Thank you so much. And so Sanah, since she's referenced you, this is a perfect time to bring you into the conversation as you share, and I'd like to use you to share a little bit of your personal story, but how that really informed your work around destigmatization of mental health and mental issues and integrating the importance of integrating mental health early in life, in children's life, in the K-12 years.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to share, and thank you so much for your inspirational story. I'm so inspired by all the amazing work that you do, especially because nonprofits have a special place in my heart. But a lot of how I got started is, as you mentioned, my personal story. So when I was 12 years old, I went to bed and overnight lost all of my hair. I was diagnosed with a very, very aggressive form of alopecia that just came on really strong. And at that age, as you can imagine, that is absolutely traumatizing. You are at the age where you really, really are still developing and you really care what other people think. And you have such a strong kind of relationship with your physical appearance and how you choose to showcase yourself to the world. And so within a day, that whole perception was shattered, and I could not even look at myself in the mirror anymore. And so I wore a wig, and I was severely bullied in school, from gum in my wig to mean notes in my locker. And even though it was really hard and people said mean things to me, I realized that the things that I was saying to myself were so much worse. And I realized that the voice that needed to change was the voice in my head. And so I looked to my school system, and I didn't really see programs that were provided for young people and for mental health. And so I knew that that's because schools are afraid to talk about these topics. There is a lot of stigma. There's a lot of fear surrounding bringing these up in conversation. So I wanted to create a nonprofit that could begin to address these and kind of shatter that stigma. It's important, like you said, that we get every single person involved in the conversation, from parents to teachers to administrators to schools counselors to corporations to healthcare workers to tech companies. Everyone needs to be a part of this mental health conversation, because so many factors impact our day-to-day wellness and student day-to-day wellness and individual day-to-day wellness. So if everyone's not on board and not on the same page, it's going to be really difficult. So that's just a little bit about myself. I've already learned so much from all of you, and I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspiring and so powerful, and we appreciate your bravery. And not just your bravery, but owning your own power to do something to change circumstances for other young women who may find themselves in similar situations. And I want to shift to Thuba. Your organization supports girls' physical, mental, and emotional health through sport. And so I'd like to ask you about how grassroots community engagement plays a role and as we think about how we recover post-pandemic. What does it look like at the grassroots people level, outside of the big systems of government and the big systems of corporation? How do grassroots folks get involved? What are the key ways that we can include them as we're thinking about building back better?
Thank you so much. Such an important question, and I'm so inspired to be here and to be able to share a lot of what we're doing in Namibia with the Physically Active Youth Program. I think at the end of the day, we're so big on sort of prescribing programs to people who are actually going through the stuff. And for me, I think the most important thing is to be inclusive and build the programs with the people who are actually going through those contexts on a local level. But the other thing that I always say is that if our communities are better, then the world will be better. And our communities are a reflection of what the world right now is a reflection of what our communities at the grassroots level look like. And working to redress those social injustices that exist is very, very important in order to lead us to a better, as you say, build a better world and lead us to a better recovery. I think holistic development of young people in safe spaces is an important thing. If our spaces that we bring these young people to are safe, then our young people will be more and more empowered to be able to use those safe spaces to redress the issues that they see on the ground, to creatively come up with solutions to better build their communities for the better. And I think that our education should be empowering enough, because if our education is empowering, to give them those skill-based, those skills that they need for a future that they will create themselves. So if our education is empowering in that sense, then the way that they go forward with that education is going to determine everything, and it will determine our future. So in speaking to a more inclusive recovery, we have to be very creative in terms of what are the programs that we offer? How do those programs help the young people redress? And it cannot be a standalone program. It has to be fully holistic for it to make the impact that it needs, because we're dealing with a young person who goes through stuff every day. And the young people that we work with coming from these marginalized communities, they go through so much trauma every day. Not even before the epidemic, before the pandemic, they were already going through stuff. So you can imagine how those issues were amplified during lockdown. So I couldn't emphasize it enough. It's not prescribed for them. It has to be designed together with them in mind, and it has to be holistic, and it has to be collective. It is collective ownership. It's not one person's problem. It's not a developing context problem, but it's everybody's all-inclusive problem. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Thuba. And you raise a very interesting point that I'm going to shift to Megan to talk about, which is around cultural competency and how we create solutions that fit the local context that where the challenges are occurring. And so, Megan, I love your title, Senior Accessibility Evangelist. I love that. I want to ask you, what are we seeing in current technology trends, and how are we ensuring that we're creating culturally competent applications when it comes to designing solutions that address our mental well-being?
Yeah, it's such an important conversation because technology has this dual role to play, right? We recognize that technology can actually create mental health conditions. And for those of us who live with permanent mental health conditions, I personally have an anxiety disorder as well as fibromyalgia. We know that it can have a disproportionate impact, in fact, on the types of symptoms that we may experience. But then we also are seeing this rise of what I call apps as mental health advocates or wellness advocates. And so as we begin to see the marketplace really begin to explode with new types of applications to help you do everything from plan your day to meditate, to really think about the way that you manage your own schedule, to things that are built right into, for example, things that we may use every single day, like Outlook or Microsoft Teams, where, if it's after hours, you'll see a little nudge that says, hey, are you sure you want to send that? Because we need to be able to keep a better boundary on the way that we help balance that work-life schedule. But I think one of the most important things that we have to address is, as we use AI increasingly to make our technology more responsive, more personalized to each one of us, do we have enough data from the disability community? Do we have enough data from the Black community who are experiencing mental health conditions to say that those applications are going to be successful and they are going to be culturally competent? So one of the things that we did at Microsoft was host a workshop just 2 weeks ago where we really dug in and looked at mental health, societal bias, and the Black community, recognizing that we don't have enough data today to really think about the way that future technology that uses AI in a very positive way will be completely inclusive. And so I think that's one of the questions that we as a community continue to have to ask ourselves, which is, why do we have a disability data desert? Mental health is the #1 disability in the world today. And how do we begin to honestly think about the way that we collect data? We do that in a way that's responsible, safe, and fair, and we use that to empower ourselves when it comes to technology. Now, just as a last note, I think that we've talked about COVID and, of course, the impact that we're beginning to see. But I'm in the US, so I'm going to give you a US statistic, so forgive me, which is the Center for Disease Control reported that in January 2019, 8% of the American population was experiencing generalized anxiety disorder symptoms. Just last month, they reported that 33.5% of the American population is now reporting generalized anxiety symptoms, and women are disproportionately part of that community. So this is growing. We know that COVID is having a huge pressure in that, and technology has a role to play in the way that we think about our daily lives.
Wow, those statistics are startling. Wow. So Sarah, I want to shift to you because as Megan said, technology, especially in this period, is helping us to live our lives, but is also causing us to have some anxiety or exacerbating anxieties that we already had, particularly around the workplace. And at Twitter, I know that you all have instituted a global support system for your employees because, after all, people are using Twitter more now than ever since we are all confined in some way, shape, or form. So talk to us about what it looks like at a practical level in a workplace to support your employees, your team members, as you address their physical, mental, and spiritual health. How are you navigating this, Sarah?
Thank you so much. What a privilege to be amongst all the brilliant minds and huge hearts. And I also want to just say to Women's Forum and Kiara that we miss you in Asia this time. Let's make sure Women's Forum will come to Asia in 2021. Right? So I like to start with 2 quotes on mental health, and I think this ties very well everyone has just said. What mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and more unashamed conversations. Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable is more manageable. With that spirit, I'm most proud in terms of how Twitter has put together an entire holistic ecosystem. And we are always putting employees' safety and well-being on top of the priority list. So the ecosystem I'm talking about during this year, as we're all learning and making something happen, right? So one side is really about HR policy. You know, what kind of health, both physical and mental. We have online physicians, we have online psychologists. That's all taken care of. We have fitness allowance because we also believe that fitness that generates the kind of adrenaline that make your happy index higher and make us healthier. So these are actually related subjects. We also are very much into what Thuba said, the community, the supporting community. We have weekly, yoga classes, we have cooking classes, we have games, and we have, office parties, just to make sure the teams continue to build. What is most impressive is the spirit and our management mindset is on the daily basis, consistently communicated throughout any email, any meeting, from our CEO to all layers of management. We first of all always address our gratitude to what we have, to what our team built, and to how we can continue to be and to work, to contribute and to love, right? And that gratitude, it is so important. Don't let us not forget, in all these challenging times, there's so much we have, right? And we also have this consistent communication about, as Megan said, please make sure we remind everyone, please do not do email, please take care of yourselves. We also encourage young people to really speak up for whatever there's a need. As we said, conversations starts is the absolutely beginning. So that is a holistic programs, or I think it's just the spirit and execution. And the way that Twitter has provided is even before I know I need something, they have anticipated that, which is fantastic. And the hashtag One Team, it really help everyone to strengthen that community building in this challenging time, and we can support each other.
That's fabulous. I think after that, we all want to go work at Twitter. So let me ask you, each of you, and this dovetails into a question from our audience, are doing such important work. And it seems as though if we could just take what you all are doing and just export it everywhere, we would be almost home in terms of success. How can schools, governments, businesses, grassroots community work together better? Because we have solutions. You all have solutions that you have tested and that are working. What do we need to do to scale this up? How can these institutions work better together as we are looking toward a mindful recovery? And Sanah, I want to start with you. What's your view? How can we do this and make mental health, mental wellness, a global passion?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of my work and the way I've hoped to begin to do it is, as you can tell, storytelling, right? I think that people often minimize the power of it. But I think when you tell a story and you tell it so boldly and so relatably that people see themselves in it, you can change hearts and minds. So I really do believe that we need storytelling on all levels. You know, I think I hope that I can be a good example for other young people who I'm very close to in age. You know, when we go talk, I hope that they can see themselves in me when I go do my middle school and high school assemblies. And just like that, I kind of needed a role model growing up. When I looked at the executives I looked up to, when I looked at the celebrities I looked up to, when I looked at the individuals I looked up to, I really didn't see anybody talking about this. And I know that everyone has mental health, just like everyone has physical health. And I think if there was more of a storytelling component, that would be great. And then I think the other thing is, especially depending on which community you're trying to help and work for and create solutions for, have a member of that community at the table when creating those solutions. If you are working to address young people's mental health, you need to have a young person who is compensated for their time at the table making those decisions in those policy meetings, in those corporate responsibility meetings. You need to have the population you're trying to help represented. Otherwise, your solutions are not, they're just not going to catch. And I think that's something that also people forget, like this idea that representation really matters and it really makes a difference, both in the sense that you feel your struggles are represented and both that voices are represented all across the board.
Thank you. That's great. I love the point about representation. Marion, you talked about the community approach and building in, making this a systemic thing, making our approach systemic so that we are focusing on preventing and instead of curing. What needs to happen? What's your view about what we need to change in order for us to get to that mindset?
Thank you. No, it's a very important question and one we've been grappling with, and we've changed a lot of our approach to systems change and how we work with our partners in the past couple of years. And a big change that we have done is how can we create ecosystem of change and really work across the board, across policymakers, international organizations, local NGOs, and really bring them together quite in a hyper-local fashion so that, to Sanah's point, they can co-create the solution that they want to see and they can look all in the same direction in terms of the change that they want to see. A few things need to happen. Obviously, it's not simple, but we have a complex problem at hand, and I don't think we should go for simple right now. So we should try and we should pilot and test and fail probably. But these ecosystem of change are really an opportunity to adopt a collective vision and collectively act and impact in the same direction, and really design mutually reinforcing activities so that government and NGOs and companies are all implementing towards a similar action plan, a collective action and impact plan. That's a little bit the aspiration. But having said that, we also noticed that there are great gaps in terms of capacity for us, all of us, to think in a systemic fashion. We don't have the tools, the methodology. We're not equipped or taught how to think at that complex level. To hold space for that complexity is something that our brains sometimes can't really handle. But there are new ways and new methodology that are out there, and we're starting a partnership with the School of Systems Change, really starting to think about what are the teachable methodology and tools that we may want to impart on health leaders, health innovators, health visionaries, so that they can work together with the same tools, capabilities and methodology towards this collective action and impact plan.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And in our pre-session, you told a story about the doctors at the waterfall, and they were standing at the base of the waterfall catching the babies until one of them said, "Why are we standing at the base of the waterfall? Let's go up to the top of the waterfall to figure out why the children are falling into the water in the first place. And if we can stop it there, then we won't have to be at the bottom of the waterfall." So with that sort of mindset too, but I want to ask you, how do we build a system that catches the problem before the children come down the waterfall? You previously talked about systems being engineered to make people fail. How do we system engineer for success?
This is exciting. I think for starters, let's normalize these dialogues, number one. Mm-hmm. Let's normalize these dialogues, and then let's amplify them. So let's normalize them, then let's put them on top of a, mountain tower top, and then let's amplify them and make them visible. And I say, let's go viral with this type of dialogues because they are important. But secondly, at the end of the day, it's the system that is the power, it's the system that chooses where to invest and how much to invest. And I think we need to challenge the system to invest with quality. If the system invests with quality, it means it gives me a chance not to fail, because it's going to bet on me and it's going to say to me, Thuba, it's a development plan, it's long term, it's dealing with a human being and thousands of human beings and millions and billions, with the statistics we just said, of young people that need that system to allow them the room to grow. So that system should be flexible and adjustable and adaptable, all those smart words that are necessary to get it to bet on these young people to make a choice. In that way, it's a sustainable system. It empowers us and enables us to, it's going to be trial and error, to learn as we go, because it's a dynamic, changing world. It's a brutal world that demands so much from us, from our young people, and the ask is great. And it's important that we provide these opportunities and platforms where we dialogue with the investors, with the leaders, with the managers, and where are those platforms where organizations, grassroots organizations, and all these entities can come together in one place, and we say, what do you need in Namibia? What do we need in Saudi Arabia? Wherever in the world we may be, and who has what, and what can they offer? Because I really believe, as Marion said, ecosystems of change. It's all of us being part of that ecosystem and creating that ecosystem that allows itself to be sustainable and to drive us to the change that we need to see. And for that to happen, we can all not sit in our silos and have this dialogue separately in different groups, but we need to be able to meet in these platforms where we can, again, preventive, where we can do all these things we need to do right before we need to, so it's not like putting out the fire once they started, but the before. So I think for me, my answer, create those platforms, let's meet in those platforms, then let's have these dialogues, and then let's amplify them. Let's go viral. Thank you.
Love it. I love it. And that dovetails so nicely into the work that you do, Richa, with the Labhya Foundation. And talking about, I love the phrase that Thuba used around betting on children. A system that bets on me, that believes in me, that believes in my success. How do you create that kind of conversation at a systemic level when it comes to education? Richa, what are you seeing? How do we make sure that the system is accessible for all the children, including the poor children, including the well-resourced children? How do we make this part of our everyday conversation?
Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you so much, Thuba, for bringing out that important, call to action. I think before the opportunity, I would love to talk about what is the biggest barrier to mental health education in public schools and schools in general. And I think the biggest barrier is that we haven't been able to define or come to a singular definition of either the need or what mental health means in different contexts. And the second barrier is definitely that we look at mental health mostly, and systems in general look at mental health and are scared of talking about mental health because it's seen as this big intangible thing, when in fact mental health is a science. It's supported by decades of science, and also it is meant to be talked about in the sense of competencies as well. So just in the way we talk about science and math and English in school, we need to start talking about what are the skills and competencies children need and can develop in order to combat mental health illness or any kind of mental health disorder. And I think just bringing the thread to the opportunities to systems and schools really identifying the need. Schools and education systems are open to change. As a 19-year-old, when I pitched to the Delhi government that this is something that is important, I have the skills to give to you. I can enable the system with curriculum, teacher capacity building, monitoring and evaluation, resource mobilization to understand how we can do this at scale. They had no reason to say no. And that is because all we need to do is demystify, like Thuba said, what mental health is. And that goes beyond the dialogue we're having today. That goes beyond. So when the Women's Forum ends, I hope we all come back together and brainstorm on how we can scale this up in all the countries that we're calling in from. I hope that we're able to connect with more people today. In the comment section, we have some interesting people posting interesting questions, and I hope we can continue this dialogue and bring it to action. I think the second thing that's really important is us not moving away from policy when we talk about mental health education. It's really important that, like we have institutionalized all kinds of education, physical education even to a certain extent, it's really important to understand that we need resources, we need policies, we need rules and regulations and laws to support mental health education in schools. And then just closing with, one of the things I strongly believe in and the work that Labhya does, today we're working with 2.5 million children, but we have almost 236 million children in India itself enrolled in public education systems who need this kind of education. And then there are also children enrolled in private schools who are not exactly in the best position either to access this kind of skills and competencies. And I think for that, what we really need to do is start collaborating and start thinking of mental health as not just support, but also skill building. And this is a great time for us to start on the skill building bit of it, because we're all in a position where we can not only hold the government accountable and not only hold different people in power accountable, but also leverage that power to reach to the last mile children.
That's great. That's great. Really important points you make there. I'm going to shift to a question from the audience, and I'm going to direct this to you, Sarah, which is, what role does social media play in mental health and connectivity in the middle of this pandemic? We all know that we are on social media more than ever before. It's a way that we get information, that we share information, but there's also a bit of a downside to that as well. So what are you seeing in terms of how we make these forms of connection more inclusive and more sensitive around our mental health and wellness?
That's a great question and aspect. Thank you so much. Social media provides a platform where every single one of us, no matter where we are, can reach out to the rest of the world across the boundaries of city, town, countries, continents, right? So it's a fantastic platform, and especially in terms of mental health, especially in terms of our interests, this is an excellent platform where we have groups. So we have hashtag cooking, we have hashtag, the best restaurants in certain places, we have hashtag, how do I express my feelings? So I think this is a natural grouping and an easy access for people around the world to participate and to find people with like mind, and also find different information where we didn't have the access in the past. So I think that is just a natural communication, grouping, and community building event. And speaking of social media, I think we each need to take up our own responsibilities, right? So there are just certain rules and unspoken rules and certain respect and certain expressions. And that is a great tool for us to participate, to show up, and to find partners. So in terms of speaking of mental health, I believe that each one of us, we are responsible for our body, mind, and spirit, right? We have to take care of us as a whole person, our brain, our heart, our gut, and our limbs. And doing so, we can leverage, we can take advantage of the global accessibility of social platform, that we can find the place where we have a strong support system. We have developed, we can satisfy our curiosity about different knowledge, about different interests, and about different explorations. And that will be the support system for our mental health.
Thank you, Sarah. And Megan, the last question goes to you. I'd like you to share, we spend so much of our time at work, even in this pandemic. And Microsoft has these employee resource groups. Can you tell us a little bit about the employee resource groups and that might serve, and things that might serve as a model for the rest of us in our own corporate lives and our own company lives, and how that these ERG groups provide support?
Yeah, the pandemic has taught me a number of things about inclusion. And, the first is that we want to belong to something bigger than ourselves, right? That's often our friends and family group. That might be our religious communities, but really that is our work communities. We do spend quite a bit of time with each other, collaborating on projects and working together. And so, technology is playing a really interesting role these days in creating those connection points and helping us build out those communities. But it's the way in which we help foster communication and raise the voices of people who may otherwise feel completely unseen or may not be heard. And so I think part of what's really important about having mental health, very specific mental health communities within organizations, like corporations, is that it provides the opportunity, again, for people to share stories, to be part of something that they know that they can find psychological safety and a sense of belonging. And I have to really emphasize that inclusion means that we are actively creating an environment in which people feel seen and heard, and that they feel a sense of belonging. And that is so incredibly key to what any organization can do, especially now during the pandemic, is to really lean into what it means to build a culture of inclusion. I personally have learned so much from the community that I co-run with one of my colleagues, Jenna Mura, which is now I have this just brilliant insight into what it really means to find working styles. How do you talk to a manager about mental health, maybe when this is the first time you've ever experienced a symptom? And so it's been moments of challenge. There have been tears, but more than anything, there is a strong support system where people know they are not alone. So I think that might be one of my favorite things that I do, is get to really lean into the community and really help make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and that it's heard at the very senior level of our company. And we know that there is a path to action if we do need to change.
That's fantastic, Megan, and a great way for us to bring our session to a close. So the last question I want to ask each one of you is what we've been asking throughout the Women's Forum. As we gather our own thoughts and recollections and reflections. And that is simply this: in just one or two words, what have you learned from the pandemic? What can we build on, or how will we reimagine an inclusive future? Just one or two words that you want to highlight that capture your thoughts and your feelings. And I'm going to go in reverse order this time and start with you, Sarah.
I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us to reimagine, reframe, redesign the new normal for our body, mind, and soul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Megan.
To me, this is nothing about us without us. Sanah mentioned this, but as organizations, no matter what your work is, bring people with mental health conditions to the table to bring their lived experience, their out-of-the-box thinking, and really just to make sure that we're grounding ourselves in what people really need and really want.
Thank you. Thuba?
I think my words are, I believe. I believe it is possible. It is possible to create the world that we dream of. The world that can be safe for all children and young people, a world where they can afford to dream and believe in the reality of those dreams coming to pass. I think that this conversation, this platform, this moment, everything it has been, meeting these amazing people, dialoguing with a global audience and that sort of thing, I think that inspires me to have hope and belief. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sanah?
In adversity, I think there's the opportunity to heal and the opportunity to serve others. And I think that this pandemic has reminded me that. I think courage roars sometimes when our voice is shaking.
Okay, I love that. And Richa?
I think this is an opportunity for us and our young people to unleash our potential and mindfully become lifelong learners.
All right, and last but not least, Marion.
Thank you. I would say go up the waterfall, go upstream as much as possible when we design and rethink health, and hold complexity, hold space for complexity, and not shy away from very complex and difficult conversation. That's probably where we will find the most beautiful answers.
Thank you so much, sisters. This has been a rich and empowering conversation. You've given me so much to think about and to reflect on as I go through the rest of my day and the rest of this year and through this pandemic. And we want to encourage all of those who have joined us this morning to reflect on these thoughts, these sisters, what they have brought, reach out to them, continue the conversation. Courage roars when our voice is shaking. I love that. And don't be afraid to go up the waterfall. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the Women's Forum.
Yes, thank you very much to Leah for her skillful moderation as always. Thank you to all of our speakers and participants. And please do visit the live page to watch the next session. Thank you very much, everyone.